A prison in South Wales, not the sort of place you would immediately associate with the teachings of an Austrian philosopher and visionary who died in 1925. But Rudolf Steiner was used to challenges, and he challenged us. Phil Forder runs educational courses at Park Prison. Over 20 years ago, with a young son to educate, he came across a Rudolf Steiner Waldorf school and eventually taught there himself, first in the kindergarten and then for 8 years as a class teacher in the middle school. He has worked in the prison for 11 years.
I often say to myself, and I hear it all the time, there by the grace of God, and I think that's very appropriate in a prison. And you do come into life with strengths or weaknesses, and I think it's the job of a teacher, and that extends into here, is to help people to fulfill their potential, their destiny.
Phil was initially engaged at the prison as an art teacher, helping the men to learn to draw and paint.
What I'm doing now is not so much teaching art, but using art as the medium to deliver self-development and to look at yourself. I feel things happen to you in your life which you might say, well, they're out of your control, but they are in your control, because if you believe in karma, then they obviously are. So there's meaning in all of it.
Do you find that the prisoners can come to an understanding of that?
Yes, I do. I think they can, sometimes in a very conscious way and sometimes not so conscious, but I do think that you're dealing with the whole person, not just what you see in front of you. Yeah.
I mean, is that what you try and do with your work with them, then? Is that what you're trying to do?
I think it's a waking up. It's a connection. It's trying to put into place something that's missing, and usually the momentum for that comes from the man themselves, not from me. I just present the opportunity, or try and present the possibility for that to happen, but it's actually them who take it up with a lot of gusto, actually, because it's what they want.
So how is that similar to what you did as a Waldorf school teacher, then?
Because I think you're working with the same forces. You're working with not just the cognitive forces, you're working with the feeling life and with the behaviour, the will. So you're actually working with people in a more holistic way. Yeah. And recognising the bigger picture. I think what Steiner was trying to bring was several things, but for me the main thing was that there's a lot more to our existence and what we perceive than meets the eye.
What does meet the eye is that some people seem to be dealt rotten cards in life. Whether these situations are, in Phil's words, karmic or simply come about through chance is difficult to really know. But Steiner's statement, "We are slaves of the past, but masters of the future," is, I find, a helpful challenge, whatever the reasons and the circumstances in which we find ourselves. What happened yesterday clearly influences today, but tomorrow is up to us. Ruskin Mill in Gloucestershire is a Steiner-inspired residential college for young people between the ages of 16 and 25 who had, until now, for one reason or another, fallen through the educational net. They have, in the current jargon, learning difficulties. The students work on the land and in craft workshops, not necessarily to become farmers or craftsmen, but rather to experience what pupils in Steiner Waldorf schools in particular learn at an earlier age, to exercise their physical skills and coordination, and to actually make something as a sound basis for the more abstract and intellectual learning that follows.
Oh, there's two walks there.
At Ruskin Mill, they are therefore aiming to recreate some of the earlier developmental stages that many of the students have missed, and in a situation where the role model of the adult is crucial.
We don't throw it too close to there because smaller fish might swim down there. We don't throw it too close to the side because otherwise it gets caught in all the rocks and then it causes sort of disease and bacteria.
Ross, if there's any problems, you can just hold the horses, can't you? Yeah. Hold fast! Come on.
Above all, they're trying to help young people, whatever their past difficulties, to move on, to take the reins and to become masters of their future.
We're educating more than just the intellect of the student, because that hasn't worked for them very often in the past. So we're really educating the head, the hands, the heart, and seeing them as a whole being, and understanding that if you educate the hand, then actually you're educating the head as well through your feeling realm. So it's a very holistic picture of how to educate somebody, and that happens on the farm and in the craft workshop and in the kitchen and in the household, wherever the students are encountering life at Ruskin Mill.
The work of the Ruskin Mill Educational Trust is the inspiration of Angus Gordon. The source of his inspiration, besides Rudolf Steiner, is the 19th century craftsman and designer William Morris and the art critic and philosopher John Ruskin. Over the past 18 years, the organisation has grown from 35 students to 300 students, and with 6 further centres across Britain. Transforming material, wood, clay and metal, and growing their own food as an inspiration for transforming themselves is the essence of this educational initiative.
One of the challenges that Rudolf Steiner actually places in the world is that problems have to be gone through. They have to be overcome. They can't be avoided for true transformation. And any offer of education or intervention that doesn't value at the heart the freedom of the individual to continue recycling their own pain, if you like, or their own trauma. If they don't want to take that step, it is absolutely clear you can only offer them simple tools to start that journey.
Don't come back up the hill, just come down it, okay?
Right, okay. Yeah, and then that just humps.
What's happened?
I didn't see that.
You just cut the string?
The string went too close.
Right.
The string went too close.
Emerson College in Sussex is an adult educational centre where Steiner's work is studied and developed. I did a course there myself over 40 years ago.
And it's a very hard and lonely decision quite often to end. And what I wanted to say, it's helpful, I think, to know that externally ending a relationship does not end it, that it will find its resolution in time.
Relationships are the topic currently being explored for a diploma course in biographical counselling, underpinned by the notion that we're not just determined by the interplay of nature and nurture, but that each one of us has a spiritual biography, what Carl Jung called a person's story, and that the circumstances of our past lives play into each new incarnation, what is often described as our karma. Are you saying that our relationships, whether they be the good ones or the difficult ones, invariably have some sort of karmic element to them?
Yeah, almost always. You could say that we share a past, we have met before, and the question is, what are we doing now? So almost invariably, we have a history with each other. And really, Steiner's very strong about that. It's really time to wake up to that, to let the other wake us up, to become aware of them, and through them becoming aware of ourselves. he talks about that we are each other's initiators, into the mystery of what is a human being. So to be able to carry that person in our thoughts with their particular struggle, even if we cannot live together. When we listen to somebody's story, we can sometimes hear this, and sometimes people say, I was born this way, I was born with this question. So I think already people have intuitions that this has come from somewhere else. So we don't remember, but we have a growing sense of, like, oh, hello again, I know you, or, oh my God, it's you again. You know, that kind of feeling. I think people do have that experience. And redeem the pictures of each other, because it's very painful for both partners to be carrying a negative picture of the other.
But you're not trying to help people understand or remember their past lives.
No, it's not about that. Because anyway, I mean, no, it's actually much more to the future. So can I understand what I've done in this life? Can I get in touch, get a handle on my own biography so I can take a step into the future? So it's much more future orientated. What's calling me? How can I realize what I've come to do, but not about what I have done or what I have been in my past life.
Steiner's own biography, his biography as Rudolf Steiner, born 1861, died 1925, philosopher, educationalist, visionary, is dominated by the question he was increasingly asking himself as he reached the age of 40. How long must I be silent? Already as a boy, growing up in the Austrian countryside, the son of a humble railway official, he had spiritual experiences about which he could speak to no one. His years as a student in Vienna towards the end of the 19th century were increasingly dominated by his encounter with the work of Goethe the scientist. Here he began to find a bridge between his own study of the sciences and philosophy and his inner world of supersensible experiences. It pointed to a new and deeper way of knowing. Steiner then spent 7 years in Weimar, editing Goethe's scientific papers and writing his key book, The Philosophy of Freedom. In 1897, he arrived in Berlin, aged 36, still unable to speak out about his realization, both through study and meditation, that what we call spirit is not somewhere else, but rather is interwoven with the material world around us, and indeed within our own being. There is only one world. Spirit and matter are not separate. It was among the theosophists in the early years of the 20th century that Steiner finally found an audience interested and open to his insights and experiences. But what was becoming the most powerful experience of all finally brought about the break with many of these early followers. For the theosophists, Jesus Christ was just one of many great teachers throughout history. For Steiner, Christ's incarnation, as a deed of huge cosmic significance, became a powerful and transformative experience.
It's not a sectarian understanding of Christ, so I think he's not wanting to associate Christ too closely with the Christian church. I mean, I think the Christian church, sadly, is all too sectarian sometimes. For Steiner, it's a strong view of how humanity as a whole is transformed by Christ.
Fraser Watts is a priest in the Church of England and someone with a long interest in the work of Rudolf Steiner. He's also a Fellow of Queen's College, Cambridge, and reader in theology and science.
There's been quite a big tendency in the 20th century to do a retreat to some kind of subjective or existential understanding of Christianity. But Steiner is absolutely going in the opposite direction. For him, it is just an objective fact that the evolution of human consciousness was changed by Christ. I mean, take it or leave it. I mean, and even if no one had known about that, even if there had never been anyone of Christian faith, for Steiner, I think that transformation of human consciousness would still have happened as a result of the work of Christ.
The church at Potschach, in the village where Steiner lived until he was 8 years old. As a child and throughout his life, he was drawn to a great variety of people, priests included. In his autobiography, he describes his father as a free thinker. For Steiner himself, what increasingly mattered was knowledge, but the kind of knowledge in which science and religion, faith and reason are not at odds. A scientist of the invisible is how he has sometimes been described.
I think the distinctive thing about Steiner's approach to that is to want to find some scientific approach to religious and spiritual questions. There are different ways of bringing science and religion into dialogue, but I think that's what's distinctive, to approach, I think he would say the spiritual rather than the religious, but to approach the spiritual in a scientific way. He clearly has exceptional powers. Because they're so unusual, it's hard to know quite how to characterize those, but he's clearly some kind of clairvoyant. And he's unusually disciplined and highly trained in the way he uses those clairvoyant powers. And he has such a serious sense of purpose to leave the world a better place as a result of his mission. And arising out of that, all this great outpouring of practical activity. And I don't know of anyone else who spans all those things, really, has the exceptional powers, is so disciplined with them, so purposeful and so practical. I think that's a unique contribution.
Why is Steiner not better known, do you think?
It's an interesting question why Steiner isn't better known. I think there are various reasons. There's something off-putting about his writings. I think that has to be said.
What style, you mean?
Yes. Style and content, I think. And also something off-putting about the society, the kind of following that he has sometimes built up around him, which can look rather too cult-like from the outside. Not at all what he wanted, I think, but it can look like that.
The network of people interested in Steiner's ideas is worldwide and growing. Here in Hyderabad in South India, several hundred are gathering for a conference of the Asia-Pacific region of the Anthroposophical Society. Anthroposophy being the name Steiner chose for his movement after his break with the Theosophists. Most, if not all, of these people would reject the notion of a cult, in that as teachers, farmers, doctors and therapists, although interested and inspired by Steiner's insights, they are working hard to make these insights their own and to take them further, as well as to learn from important developments in education, science, medicine and psychology since Steiner's death nearly 100 years ago.
I'm originally from the UK. I met Antroposophy 34 years ago in a school for handicapped children near Reading. It's now a Waldorf school. At that time it was a special school. Some severely disadvantaged children there. And I worked as the gardener. And my wife worked as the cook. And for me, meeting the work of Rudolf Steiner was like finding water in the desert. Most of my teaching in Waldorf education has been in Australia. And in the last few years of still teaching in Australia, in the 90s, I already started to come to Asia during my holidays and made contact with various very grassroots initiatives beginning the Waldorf schools. And little by little this grew, and now I work full-time, really. And particularly now in China and Taiwan.
What is the response then to Steiner in that part of the world?
It's exploding. It's phenomenal what is happening in China at the moment. I would say the people who come to the training courses and seminars and the initiatives that have started in China, those people, I would say, are hungry. They're really hungry to find meaning in their lives. They're hungry to connect with the outside world. And they're deeply grateful. That is my experience, and this is what gives me energy.
The mainstream education in China is very, very tough, very, very competitive, and the children, they're forced to study from very young, from kindergarten back to 3 years old. And more parents realize this is not what they want. And actually, like the world of schools and kindergartens, most initiatives are parents.
Ancient China was also very much part of my pathway towards anthroposophy. And I think what they find in the work of Rudolf Steiner is the holistic context within which everything has meaning and everything has an importance. And so it was in their own culture. To be an artist was at the same time an expression of being a human being. To whatever it was that one was doing, one was part of something greater than oneself, and the ethic was to really put yourself fully into what you were doing. Yeah, so I think they recognize something of a culture that has been broken in China through many events. There are some people who want to bring back that culture into Waldorf education. It's like make it an entirely Chinese education. But there are others who take, in my view, a more balanced point of view and recognize the ancient world has gone. Yeah? We live in the modern world. But we can go forward in this modern world and re-find the ancient world in a modern context. And that's, for me, what anthroposophy does. And it's fascinating for me that all the different cultures I've been to, and I've had the privilege of traveling cheaply, I have to say, but traveling to many, many parts of the world. And again I found that people there can say, like here in India, they can say, but anthroposophy is just a repetition of what we already know, yeah? And so many people have the wrong understanding that Steiner just gathered this and this and this and put it all together. But the reason that they can find their own culture in anthroposophy is because within anthroposophy there is something intrinsically human. It is universal. And this universality expressed itself in the past in all the different healthy cultures. And in today I feel that what we are in the process of doing all around the world, not just people involved with anthroposophy, but we are creating a new culture.
I am a Zoroastrian, and in Zoroastrianism there is nothing like karma. It's resurrection theory there. So for me, karma, there wasn't resistance. In fact, I found my answers to some things that happened in my life. Karma was one of the sort of tool for me to understand why things happen. And Steiner's view made me look at my own religion in a different way. It's not that I'm rejecting Zoroastrianism completely, but I understand my religion much better now because of Steiner's viewpoints.
A key message running through many of Steiner's lectures and books on humanity's spiritual journey is that evolution has essentially been an evolution of consciousness, and therefore that our relationship to nature, to each other, and indeed to the divine, to God, has gradually changed. The more we have become individualized, the more we have forgotten our sense of interconnectedness with the world around us and with the universe itself. This feeling of separation I'm me and you're you, has given us our sense of self, yet has come at a certain cost. But the journey isn't over. In the words of T.S. Eliot, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. While in Hyderabad, I visited one of India's 7 Steiner Waldorf schools, 4 of which are in Hyderabad. Sloka was founded in 1997 and has nearly 400 pupils. Like all Waldorf schools, crafts, music and art are an important ingredient. But it is the morning 2-hour main lessons that are at the heart of the Waldorf curriculum.
So we would do a little bit of recall of what we have done last year in physics.
And from what they are taught in history, science, geography, etc., the pupils create their own textbooks.
This book is very beautiful.
This is excellent. This is about astronomy that is done in class 6. We begin with the sunset and we continue the observation till sunrise. This is the earth and the position of man. In class 6, when we are doing the astronomy block, we ask the children to stay back in school for a night, and throughout the night they observe the sky. From the North Star we start our story. All the constellations are observed by the children throughout the night, and this is how it goes on till sunrise. So the next day the child has to write about what he observed the previous night.
3 or 4 weeks are devoted to each main lesson subject, and the pupils will learn about that subject initially from their teacher and not from textbooks. They will then write up and illustrate the lesson themselves. And everything taught is aimed to correspond to where the children themselves are at in their own development.
Class 8 is a very difficult class where they just want to break all the rules and just be independent and be themselves. They do not want any teacher. They just need a very, very strong authority to control them. Here we do the revolutions in history. So that is the time when a revolution is happening within them also.
None of these pupils will have started formal learning, including reading and writing, until they enter class 1, around the age of 6 or 7. In India, as elsewhere in the world, what increasingly concerns many parents in particular is the stress their children experience, both in terms of the pressures of living in the modern world, but also the pressure of having to achieve, to score points, tick boxes, pass exams, all with the aim of eventually getting a good job. But, in the opinion of many people, coming far too early in their lives. At Sloka's kindergarten in Hyderabad, the emphasis is on a very simple and rhythmic routine of creative play and stories, or simply having time to watch and wonder.
As little children, they cannot differentiate between play and work. For adults, we know that there's a play time and a work time, but children, play is as important because it's all imitation, that they imitate whatever they see. And actually, if they're like, I'm cutting fruit, they could be, cutting an imaginary fruit there, but they're actually doing it. It could look as play for us, but for them, it's real work. They're actually cutting fruit. Or perhaps they're actually cooking something. It is work for them. They cannot differentiate between work and play.
What Steiner emphasized when he founded the first Waldorf school in 1919 in Stuttgart was that childhood has distinct phases, and that children not only have to grow up and learn the ways of the world, but also need time and space so that what each one brings into the world can unfold harmoniously. Trailing clouds of glory is how Wordsworth expressed it, though some of the baggage we carry on our backs, maybe from past lives, is often far from glorious. Simple and unhurried. It is this atmosphere that is attracting more and more parents to Waldorf kindergartens all over the world. Here in upstate New York, in the Hawthorne Valley Waldorf School, I came across this growing awareness that if childhood is eroded, we are diminished as adults.
There's a story, I think it's from Zorba the Greek, about him holding a butterfly that's just come out of a cocoon and wanting to see it fly. So he tries to blow on the wings to dry the wings before their time, before they're really strengthened and ready. And the butterfly ends up crumbling and unable to really fly, and its time was not yet come for it. So we're giving children time.
I asked Janine whether she believed there'd been some golden age when all was peace and harmony.
No, I think every age has had its struggles, but I feel that, it's all a remembering and a forgetting, and we've done quite a bit of forgetting, and it's time to do some remembering again. That's really what I feel. And Steiner brought so much, but also many other humanitarians, Gandhi and Tolstoy and many great thinkers have brought these gifts. So wherever we go, if we can find ourselves centered again and being able to remember our true purpose of why we're here, in serving each other and in regenerating this gift of life.
The teachers who come forward to work in places like the Hawthorne Valley School, one of over 100 Waldorf schools in the USA, share what many other people feel these days, a view that education is not just about imparting knowledge, but is also about awakening and nurturing what the children already know.
Tell me about your...
Torrin Finzer is chair of the education department at nearby Antioch University in New England, and General Secretary of the Anthroposophical Society in America.
Which grade is she in now?
4th grade.
The great crime of our time is that in too many educational settings, the adult consciousness, the intellectual adult consciousness, is pressed on the young child in the name of performance, in the name of academic achievement. And that is a great crime to childhood, because what's happening there is you're denying the innate qualities that live in the child at that time.